Hey, thanks. Thank you so much for coming out. Give yourselves a good round of applause for coming out on Wednesday night. I really appreciate it. Good-looking crowd here. I see a lot of people from work here that I haven't seen in a long time. We've been working from home, and I've only seen these people in Zoom meetings, and I'll be honest with you, I'm really getting tired of Zoom meetings. Well, just give you a little, I don't know, insider's baseball. When I get on a Zoom meeting, I put on a nice shirt, look crisp and clean, and I button it up so I look really professional. But to let you know, I don't button it down here. Underneath it is a sleeveless t-shirt, you know, with some 80s band that's been long forgotten. I got some cruddy shorts on and untied shoes on. So up top, I look professional. And then down below, I look like I should be drinking beer in a trailer park. So. But again, thank you for taking the time in taking a chance on live storytelling. I mean, this event is based on a few simple truths. Simply that we have more in common than meets the eye, that people think about. In this divisive world that we live in now, I mean, let's be honest, everything's a mean tweet, a Facebook post that I wouldn't talk to my mother about. I mean, but we can come together, and by sitting down, listening to each other's stories, hearing what comes from the heart, we can find common ground. That's where community is built. And that's what our joy is tonight. Let me bring up my co-hosts. Down here, Mr. John Telly and Miss Emily Smar.
Hey, everybody. Just real quick, hey, I'm John Tully. We'd like to thank the Black Box Theater for hosting this event tonight. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, everybody. Also, those of you who subscribe to the Palm Beach Post, we really appreciate it. As you may know, you provide the engine for us to do great community journalism. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Emily Smar, and tonight you all received gourmet brownies from Brownies by Fairy Tale, a Phoenix-based premium bakery that we're proud to say has been part of the Storytellers Project since 2014. Fairy Tale sought out a partnership with us because they believe in the same things that we do. That telling stories, whether myths, fairy tales, or family legends, is the way that we pass down our most important values as communities and as people. At Fairy Tale, they believe that all stories are better with a sweet ending, and we can't promise that for all the tales that you'll hear tonight. However, we can say that if you visit brownies.com, you can make sure that, excuse me, sorry, you gotta bear with me for the wait that I cannot. So if you visit brownies.com, you can make sure that all of your stories end happily, or at least with a bit of chocolate.
I heard some of you out there saying, wait, brownies? I didn't hear any brownies. It's at the end. It's at the end.
I'm sure you're sitting there like, where's my brownie? Did you get a brownie? I didn't get a brownie. I know, I love my brownies too. But first off, I also, again, like to thank our subscribers for coming out tonight. You're our lifeblood. We really appreciate it. And if you do not subscribe, thank you for giving us the chance to meet with us tonight. And maybe you can find that the price that you paid for a ticket is also the same price as a 1-month subscription to one of our digital properties, the Daily News or the Palm Beach Post. So thank you for that. And I'll just let you know. Yep. So let's start getting our storytellers up here. Yes, I do have to read from a card. I got this script about a day ago, so I apologize. Some of these stories will be polished and professional. Others will be, you know, a little bit more soft-spoken and a little bit conversational, kind of like you're having dinner with your best friend. Some will be funny. Others will be a little bit more challenging. But we thank you for taking the time to sit here and listen and bring these stories to heart. So let's bring up our first presenter. He's going to tell us a story about growing up, about a little bit about adolescence, a little bit about his childhood. Let's hear it for Eddie Stevens. Eddie.
Wow. Good evening. My name is Eddie Stevens, and I am a divorce attorney. Divorce attorneys are known for dealing with high conflict, super stressful. In fact, many of my peers are just totally burnt out. If you are a family law professional, you have to be careful because of the amount of toxicity that you're exposed to. In fact, it's almost like working with poison. I have to take active steps to ensure my own mental wellness. You might be asking, why would anyone want to do this? Not only am I a divorce attorney, but I love being a divorce attorney. I get to be the help my family needed when we were in crisis. See, when I grew up in Miami, I had an older sister and two parents who loved me very much. But they both had substance abuse issues. And that led to a very chaotic childhood. When I entered high school, my mother died because of her addiction. That was devastating. In the 1980s, we didn't know about adverse childhood experiences and the impact they had on our youth. We didn't understand the science that toxic stress disrupts the development of a young child's neurological brain. But now we do. And there's a lot of mental health professionals in my life that say I am very lucky to be living a functional, productive life. I'm lucky. I didn't feel lucky at the time. I had to move in with my grandmother. She paid for things, gave me shelter, but she had already raised her kids, and I was kind of left to my own to figure out high school, getting into college. In fact, it felt like I was all alone. And then angels would appear to assist me when obstacles would present themselves at critical moments in my life, and they helped me overcome them. And these angels would manifest in different ways, like my buddy who taught me how to cook a grilled cheese and take care of my car and wash my clothes, my friend's mom who taught me how to see things from someone else's perspective, the importance of gratitude. I learned a lot of empathy from her. My 10th grade gym coach who asked me how I was doing on days where it was pretty obvious I wasn't doing very well, but yet another physical sign I was not alone. And there was my drama teacher, Mrs. Julie. She believed in me in times where I didn't even believe in myself, and she took an awkward, shy kid and made him shine. When I was 16, I wrote a play. It was about a kid who lost his mother. She let me direct that play, and it toured all over Miami. It had such a profound impact on my confidence, and it showed me that I could create something that not only helped me heal myself, but helped me heal others as well. In college, I wanted to be a storyteller, so I started studying motion picture production. But I also craved stability, and I wanted a family. And I saw my uncle, who was a very well-known divorce attorney here in Palm Beach. And I saw how good he was with his family, how he helped people. And then I had kind of a light bulb moment. Get a ticket to practice law and go work for my uncle. Yet another angel that was placed in my pathway. So I did, and once I made up my mind, getting from point A to point B was pretty easy. And I found I could do divorce. I was pretty good at it. I could deal with other people's trauma because of what I had been through. Being a divorce attorney is kind of like, at times, being a fireman, where you're actually pulling people out of very dangerous situations. Now I've been doing it for 25 years. And something happened early in my career that was wonderful. I discovered I could help people without just being a divorce attorney. Early in my career, there was a paralegal that worked with us, and she was having difficulties raising her teenage daughter. On this instance, Kathleen, her 16-year-old, went to Manalapan Beach to drink with some older boys. Now, if you're from around here, you know the inevitable result of underage drinking on Manalapan Beach. If you're not, Manalapan Beach is where the uber rich live. They're so rich, they have their own police force. Well, these kids were dumb, and they got nabbed. Kathleen thought she got off with just a warning. Her mother was beside herself, didn't know what to do. So I didn't know much about raising teenage daughters, but I did know about the law, and I had an idea. I was going to leave a message on their family answering machine. You remember those, right? If you don't, it's like a virtual voicemail for the whole family. Best way I can explain it. So I picked up the phone and dialed the number. Hello, this is Officer Stevens from the Manalapan Police Department. We're calling about the incident last night. We're going to need to speak to Kathleen. Would you please bring her down to the station? Click. That's all it took. Kathleen came home from school, played the message, instantly called her mother in a frenzied panic, and we knew we were able to leverage this moment and turn it into a teaching lesson. Now, Kathleen's mom was kind. She didn't torture her, didn't want to cause a permanent damage, and she told her that Officer Stevens was not real. But Kathleen learned that lesson, and I learned I had a superpower. I could take my unique abilities, however mischievous they were, and actually help people, and I've been doing so one person at a time ever since. When I was a kid, I used to look for these angels. Now, I look for opportunities to be the angel. I put myself in traffic where these opportunities arise. I serve on the board of directors of a charitable organization called the Center for Child Counseling. They give therapy to the most vulnerable children in our county. And they're also helping create a trauma-informed community. I serve on the board of directors of Leadership Palm Beach County, an unbelievable organization, and I get to help oversee Leadership Grow, a program for the 50 highest achieving 11th graders in our county. I've been a Boy Scout adult leader for 15 years, literally helping hundreds of young men and women on their journey. My proudest achievement? Breaking that intergenerational cycle. I have 2 boys, both in their 20s, both successful, and I could not be prouder of them. And as for Kathleen, that girl who got in trouble at Manalapan Beach, she's doing pretty good. I should know. I married her mother. And now I am I'm the grandfather to her 7-year-old child. I love being the angel, the helper of others. It's a way for me to honor the angels in my life and to keep this positive wave of energy going forward. Sometimes as my role as a divorce attorney, sometimes as a volunteer in our community, but only once by pretending to be a police officer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for your thoughtful story and your courage. All right, now we have our next teller, Carlos Pintos, on his story on immigrating to Palm Beach County from Brazil.
My name is Carlos Pinto. I'm born in Brazil. I live in Brazil for 26 years. And then I grew up in the family. My mom just completed a 4th grade in the elementary school. My daddy just completed a 60th grade in the middle school. For my family, education is a very valuable because I learned and heard about if you don't study, you cannot succeed in your life. You need to study. And my mom's dream is to have all the 4 children together at high school. She got it. All the 4 children completed high school. But I'm not stopped. I'm in the 3rd kids for my family. I graduated in the theology in 1996. And I'm still student in the business administration. I'm not completed because in 1999, I received an invitation from my uncle. He was a pastor of a Brazilian church in South Florida. This was a big challenge because I had the good life in Brazil. I was succeeded. I have a good job in Brazil. If you work as a banker, it's a good, real good job. And then I gave up of my job, and I accept this challenge to be helped in the co-pastor of a Brazilian church in South Florida. But that moment was so scary me because how to move in another country because I just speak Portuguese. But the funny story I remember was in the 7th grade in Brazil. I very succeeded in math, in Portuguese, in history, in science. But I remember I big fell in English class. And then I remember that day, my teacher told me, you cannot succeed because you're very bad in English. I say, I don't need English in my life. I live in Brazil. But we don't know the future. When I moved to the United States, I live in a very comfortable zone because I just work with Brazilian community. And the Brazilian community was very easy for me because I can speak Portuguese very well. I love to speak. But in 2008, America faced economic situation in some recession. A lot of Brazilians moved back to Brazil. Others moved to North to make money. And the Brazilian church in West Palm Beach is closed. I need to look for a job. And then I realized how to work if I have no English. How communicate it to my boss, my supervisor, what else? I have no English, 0 English, just to say yes or no. Oh, thank you, hi, that's it. It's so frustrated. And then I remember very clear when I had to talk to my wife. I forgot to say something, but this is a very opportunity to say. When I moved to the United States in September 2000, my fiancé moved to the United States in April 2001. We married, and then we live our normal life. And I remember to have a conversation, and she said, I think we need to do something different in our life. If you don't look for education, we cannot succeed at all. I remember, like my mom, to say, you need to study. In my case, I need to have an English class. And basically, my wife, she goes to the Palm Beach State College, took a couple classes. I remember the very first class she took was English for academic purpose. Wow, it's so difficult. I saw how she worked hard to learn English. And then I talked and think myself, I say, this is not for me, this is impossible. I remember my 7th grade, English is not for me. But she told me, if you don't have English, you cannot succeed. We just have a lower salary. We need to work a lot to make money. You need to do something different in your life. And then I accepted the challenge. I remember in February 15, 2016, I walked into my classroom And I think, oh, no, this is not possible. I look for a lot of people, say, they will probably think I'm dumb. I'm not dumb. I cannot express myself in English, but it's not the place for me. But I thank God. In 2020, I have graduated an associate degree in Palm Beach State College. This is not at all. I still have my class because I understand I need to improve every single day my communication. It's very easy for everybody when we stay calm and live in the comfort zone. We need to move. The comfort zone is good, but it's not good. I need to face every single day my fears. Every single day I need to embrace my challenge. I need to provide for my family. I need to provide for myself. And then I thank God because I'm here tonight. When I look back at 20 years ago, when I look back for my 7th grade, it is real impossible to express myself in public. I thank God. I thank my family. My mom just arrived from Brazil 3 weeks ago. She's here tonight. I thank my wife to support me. And then it's a very pleasure to me to honor my mom, honor my wife, and honor my father's memory. I know he will be so happy to hear what I talked to you guys tonight. Thank you so much.
Carlos, thank you so much for your story. We cover the immigration at the Palm Beach Post, and it's good to see, an individual face and what people go through when they deal with that. Thank you so much for your story, Carlos. All right. Well, our next storyteller, Cassandra Corbin Thaddes. Hope I said that right. They do good. Okay, good. Is from Boynton Beach, and she is telling us tonight's story is about growing up where sometimes actions replace words when discussing love. But take it away, Cassandra.
Whoa. Good evening, everyone. I am Cassandra Corbin Thaddes, and I want to start by saying I love you, Alice. I love you, Ruth. And I love you, Carlos. Can you hear me? Okay. I remember the very first time that I lost a loved one as a kid. And it was such a confusing feeling. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to respond. I had all types of emotions and no words. And I remember just wanting someone to just hug me and say, I love you, and it's gonna be all right. Those are the words that I longed to hear as a kid, for just being a kid or because I was an A student. I remember the time when I decided to try out for the cheerleading squad. I didn't tell anybody because I was afraid that I may not make it. And so I remember trying out and sitting on the gym floor with about 15 other girls, just waiting to hear my name called. And then, Cassandra Corbin, I made it! I was so excited. I couldn't believe that I had taken a chance on myself and I actually had made it. So now I was so excited to run home and tell my mom that I had made the cheerleading squad. Because now I knew for sure this would give me a hug. I would get an I love you. So I ran home, couldn't wait to get in the door. Mom, I made the cheerleading squad. She said, okay. okay, I'm thinking. Okay, I just made do you know what just happened? What I just went through? Okay. So I love you never made it into that conversation. I love you never made it into that conversation. So I realized that my family didn't use verbal, spoken word to say I love you. What I realized is that I love you came in the form of shelter, clothes, and food. If you had that, that meant I love you. So I took what I determined at that point was a broken love language, and I went to college. So I went to college and I met a boyfriend. This boyfriend was different than what I had ever experienced. He would say, "How are you? How are you feeling? Are you okay? Can I get you anything?" And I remember in college I lost my grandmother. And I remember being in the dorm room in this small twin bed, curled up, crying, devastated that I had lost my grandmother. And I called my boyfriend, and he came right over. He hugged me, and he said to me, "I love you." I don't remember if I said I love you back. But we got married. So we got married, and I soon realized that he had the same deficiency in terms of love language from his own family. There was never any spoken I love yous. And I remember this time I got really mad at him. Believe it or not, I get really mad. I got really mad at him. And I was like, the weapon of choice was the silent treatment. So I was really mad, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "Okay, I'm getting ready to leave. I love you." I'm thinking, what is wrong with this guy? I'm being mean to him, and he's saying, "I love you." So I realized that I thought in order to be loved, you had to be a good person or be doing something good. Then we became parents. As parents, I soon realized that we now have broken love language. We have 2 kids that are dependent on our love to live. And I remember there was this one situation where it was the dead of winter in Minneapolis, and my son, he was about 2, was not feeling well. And I, as a new parent, did what I thought I was supposed to do, and I wrapped him in a bunch of blankets and was hugging this little person so that he felt protected. And in fact, I was making the situation worse. He had a seizure in my arms. And I remember being at the bottom of the stairs in our foyer and saying, "Call 911, call the ambulance." And my husband was dialing as fast as he could, and I'm holding this little person, and he's having a seizure in my arm. And all I can remember saying is, "I love you, I love you, I love you." The ambulance does finally come, and all I could say was, I love you, as they're taking him away. He ended up being fine, and a few weeks later, I said to my husband, "We have got to say I love you to our boys. Now, this was very uncomfortable for me to even try to begin to say these words. I didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't even know if the words would come out of my mouth. I didn't know if they would be believable. And I said to him, I want our boys to be able to say I love you to each other. I want them to be able to say I love you to us. And he said, okay. So I began to hear over breakfast, cereal and bananas, and I love you. I remember being downstairs, and upstairs there's water everywhere, splashing everywhere, and I hear, I love you. Playing on the floor with blocks and cars, and in between, I hear, I love you. And I remember this one time I was sitting on the floor, my 5-year-old comes up and clunks me in the head with something, some toy, some block. And he says, I love you, Mommy. And at that moment, I looked up and I thought, for no reason, he's saying, I love you. That's unconditional love. Very first time I realized that. Our boys are now 23 and 27 as of yesterday. And they, thank you, 27. And we end every conversation, we close every text message, we exit every room by saying, I love you. And I'm so proud that that is my love legacy that I'm leaving with my boys. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. I know how hard it must have been to tell that story. We really appreciate it. Thank you. It reminds me when I was growing up, my mom used to grab me when I was a little boy, grab me by the chin and just come over and kiss the side of my cheek. And she'd pull away and she'd leave this big lipstick mark on my chin, on my cheek. So thank you for that beautiful memory. I really appreciate it. My mom's been gone a long time, but we were really close. In fact, we looked exactly like each other. My mom had a thicker beard than I did, but other than that, we looked just the same. Okay. Our fourth speaker is going to talk a little bit about overcoming obstacles, and where you're from doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. Let's hear it for Ruth Ann Vega.
Good evening. I recently retired from a financial planning firm, from a long career in financial planning. I joined John Hancock back in the 80s and became a financial planner, but there's no path to follow at that time because financial planning was a new career. So I had to develop my own path and develop my own processes. Now, why is this unusual? Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania as a little Amish girl. The Amish don't have any electricity. We had no radio, no television, and there was no expectation to go beyond the 8th grade. Because the Amish believe, and they say this, if we educate our children, they will no longer be Amish. So there was no expectation to go on and get higher education. But some of their rules are a little difficult for me to understand. For instance, they're not allowed to have a telephone in the house. So what they do is they put a payphone at the end of the lane and a buzzer in the house, and when it rings, they run out and answer the phone. Another example is my cousin who does taxes for the Amish. Now, he has a farm, and he has milking machines, and he's allowed to have electricity for the milking machines. So he put his office in the barn so that he can run the calculators and so on. But there's no electricity in the house. Well, I grew up on a 10-acre vegetable farm. We grew vegetables and took it to market. If we didn't sell all the vegetables on the market, my father would take one or two of us down on the streets of Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and we'd have to yell, "Beans, beans, peas, corn." I absolutely hated it. And I decided right there has to be a better way to make a living, and I'm going to find it. I went to a one-room schoolhouse for the first 8 years. And like my friend that couldn't speak English, I couldn't speak English until I went to school. We spoke Pennsylvania Dutch at home. This one-room schoolhouse was what you see on the TV show, what was it, The Little House on the Prairie? There's a coal stove in the corner. The desks were attached to each other. There was an outhouse out back. When I was in 6th grade, well, let me go back and tell you first about this. I remember one day it started snowing when I was in school. I had no gloves, no galoshes, no boots, and just a thin blue coat, but I had to walk the mile home. By the time I got home, I was nearly frozen. So my mother put my hands and feet in cool water to defrost me. When I was in 6th grade, my father had a religious experience, and he was very vocal about it. But the Amish didn't like this, and so they said unless he recants this experience, he can no longer be Amish. That meant we were shunned. No longer could we play with our cousins. No longer could we go to Grandma's house for dinner. We were cut off. Shortly after that, we moved out of the Amish community, and I started attending a regular school. But when I turned 15, it was expected of me that I would quit school and go to work. I remember the 2-hour conversation with my father begging me to let me go to high school. I used a strategy. I told him that if I went to high school, I could work in an office and I could earn more money from the ages of 18 to 21 than I could if I went to a factory and worked from 15 to 21. You see, at that time, any money that was earned by any of the children had to be given to my parents. Now, I was number 7 of the 12 children, so he relented and let me go to high school. I was the first one in our family that got a high school education, and I'm the only one that went to college. But because of my discussion with my father, my younger sisters, 5 of the younger sisters also got to go to high school. I married at age 19, had 2 children, but when my son was 18 and my daughter graduated from college. By the way, my daughter, when she didn't want to go to college, and she said to me, "Mom, I think you just want me to go to college because you couldn't." I said, "You're right." And I told her, I said, you go 1 year. If you don't like it, I won't make you go anymore. Well, she loved it. She got her 4-year degree. And she's here tonight. So by the time my son was 18 and my daughter was graduating from college, my husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore. So by that time, I had joined John Hancock, selling life insurance as an entree into financial planning. I wanted to find out why some people have money and others don't. But I remember when I was taking those courses and the classes, I would beg God to open my brain so that I could understand the concepts. This was like new language to me. I had no idea what a stock was or a bond was. It was completely new language. I also wanted to earn enough money so I didn't have to live from paycheck to paycheck. And the third thing I wanted to be a professional. But professional people intimidated me. And I remember the first time I had to call on an attorney, it made me so nervous that I begged my supervisor to go with me. He did. I learned that some attorneys weren't any smarter concerning life insurance and investments than I was. I was very successful with John Hancock, even the first year, partly because there was a John Hancock agent that had retired, so they gave me his clients to call on. But I soon learned, after several months, after about a year or so, I learned that my inner integrity would not allow me to present only John Hancock products to clients. So another agent and I started a financial planning firm, an independent financial planning firm. 2 years later, this agent decided that he was going to go back and sell only life insurance. Now there I was again, alone, scared, but I was determined to follow my dream, and I did. For the past 30 years, I've been married to a wonderful man, a harpist. He opened the world of music to me. And together we have traveled extensively in North America, in South America, and Europe. I now know that you don't have to stay in the situation that you were born into. And I know that you can change your thinking, and you can change your thinking and change your life. By the way, one of the things that really helped me was I took a self-improvement course, because going back a little bit, I was really at a loss. I didn't know what to do. But this course gave me the tools to change the things that I needed to change in my life. And it gave me the confidence to be myself and walk my own path. I know that you don't have to stay in the situation in which you were born. I know that by changing your thinking, you can change your situation and your life. And I also know that most of the times, the small decisions that you make in your life, they're the ones that direct your destiny and direct your path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth Ann. It was great to hear your perspective on how children can assert their own dreams and make them their reality. And now we have the Palm Beach Post's very own community and public safety editor, Tom Elia, as our last storyteller to tell stories on lessons he learned in a diner.
My rude awakening to the real world came before dawn one morning in June 1975. It took the form of my father's voice. He walked into my bedroom and said, "Tom, get up. You're coming to work with me." Now, work was a diner in Boston's South End. His father and his grandfather had opened it when they got off the boat from Albania back in the 1920s. Anybody who's seen those classic Saturday Night Live skits, "Cheeseburger, cheeseburger," knows the type, only this one was real, and it was a cornerstone of his family's American dream. Me, I was 12 years old, and to be honest with you, a disappointment. I loved to talk about sports, but I stunk at playing them. I was the kind of student who could pull a B- from the mouth of an A. I thought I was tough, and I talked tough, but I ran from bullies, and I ran even farther from girls. I must have driven my mother and father crazy, and they were the people I most worried about disappointing. Now, don't get me wrong. I know they loved me, heart and soul. But did they like me? There's a difference, and sometimes my 12-year-old mind worried, especially about my dad, as outgoing and as athletic as he was. We shared a name. I will proudly be Thomas Elia Jr. for the rest of my life, but we were so different. And with that as context, we climbed into his Volkswagen and journeyed 10 miles and a galaxy away to a strange, exotic place called work, where maybe we would find common ground. The diner was on the bottom floor of an elegant apartment building. It had big plate glass windows and low ceilings and bright orange tile on the floor and a big red and white sign above the front door. It was full of Formica tabletops and vinyl seat cushions and accents straight out of Saturday Night Live. Chips, hamburger, cheeseburger, Pepsi. John Belushi nailed them all. The place smelled wonderful. Customers at different times of the day were treated to the aromas of freshly brewed coffee, of bacon and sausage, of paprika and fried potatoes, of feta cheese and pastrami and hot turkey sandwiches. And the food was glorious down to the last bite. That diner became my home away from home on weekends and summers for the next 7 years. And when I finally stopped working there, I was well on my way to becoming an adult, or at least a writer. But those first morning and the many that followed it, the City Spa cafeteria tested my 7th grade softness in ways I was not prepared for. Put on an apron were the first words my father said to me in the workplace. I don't need an apron. Girls wear aprons. Tom, put on an apron. It was a voice I associated with report cards, so I obeyed. Then he thrust a red bucket in my face. Go fill this with ice. And so I did, and dumped it into the display case. Do it again. 6 more times. I had the upper body strength of a mosquito, so this took a while. So did unlocking the heavy front door so the meat man could come in. So did lifting the newspapers, print editions, anybody remember them? Into their display case. I was exhausted by the time the breakfast rush began at 7:30. And then his customers got to see the me I wanted to hide from the world. I dropped things. Plates, cups, glasses, often with food and drink in them. Working behind the counter of a diner is a ballet of sorts, and I proved to all of Boston that morning that I couldn't dance. I turned left instead of right, and I'd slam into my father with a hot cup of coffee. I turned right instead of left, and I'd soak my cousin in root beer. I know at least one customer's breakfast ended up on the floor that morning because I had the grace of a hippopotamus. Yeesh, my father would say, sometimes choosing a more pungent word. You've got to be more careful. I'd sulk into the kitchen and pretend to wash dishes. He would find me and summon me back to the front of the store to wait on customers again. I guess in his mind there were a few more who needed to see me struggle to slice bagels evenly and to cover them in cream cheese. I never learned to like this daily mortification, but I came to love the place it was happening. I heard jazz in the sizzle of eggs and bacon. I smelled heaven every time I opened a new bag of coffee. I tasted victory every time the cash register bell would ring during the lunch rush. My father's family never felt more like a family than when we worked there together. My aunt and my cousins and I literally walking in the footsteps of our grandparents on those bright orange tile floors. Boston back then was a city on edge. The busing protests had happened only a few months before. And it was the kind of place where you could go weeks and only see people who looked like you. But our corner, across from the city hospital, must have been the most diverse one in town. I knew doctors from the Caribbean and from Asia. I met nurses whose families came from Portugal and Puerto Rico. In Boston, I even met pastors from the Deep South. And they all seemed to get along, at least to my 12-year-old mind. And I felt at home among them. And better yet, and maybe for the first time in my life, I liked the person I was becoming. I learned I could look people in the eye and talk with them. Some of them even seemed to like me. Even the young nurses who reminded me a little of the 12-year-old girls who scared me to death. I learned that I was a disaster at some things, but I was pretty good at others, like making milkshakes. And even though math could not hold my interest in middle school, I excelled at making change, down to the last penny. Even my dad said that. And amid all this pressure to perform, I got to know him in ways that didn't always come out at home. He was funny. He could make any customer laugh or at least smile. He knew how they took their coffee and how to make them feel welcome. Now, sometimes he was funny in ways he didn't intend. When he'd get really mad, he'd vent his anger in Albanian, every curse word louder and louder than the one before. It got so bad that one day, back in the kitchen, my aunt, his sister, looked up from the mountains of Greek salad she was building and pointed her knife and said, "Tommy, you're lucky the bishop isn't in the dining room right now." But he was smart as a whip. He knew what food to order on what day, what bill not to pay, what health inspector to, shall we say, romance with Red Sox tickets. I was too young to realize that our family's economic survival depended on these behaviors that came out in the workplace. I just saw this charm offensive as his superpower. Yeah, I am the rare kid who got to see his dad as a hero. And as the summer wore on, he began to show his joy in me. I remember rounding the corner from the kitchen one day with a tray full of iconic Coca-Cola glasses when I heard him talking to a customer. "He works better than I did when I was his age," he said. My heart skipped a beat. Thank goodness I didn't send the glasses clattering to the floor. I think I smiled. And when my heart started beating again, there we were, my dad and I, finally on common ground. That was nearly 50 years ago. My dad died last year, and he sold the diner long before that. But I still love to eat in hole-in-the-wall places where immigrant families make their place in the new world. There are two of them I eat at in Jupiter every month. And the dining room of one of them makes me feel like I'm stepping back into my own past. The front of the store is plate glass window. The ceilings are low. The floor tiles, get this, are bright orange. A group of young relatives, cousins if not sisters, take the orders, serve the food, make the change. And the food is glorious. And for a second, I am 12 years old again. Thank you.
Well, those are all the speakers we have tonight for you. I'd like to give a round of applause again for Eddie, for Carlos, Cassandra, Ruth Ann, and Tom. It takes a lot of guts to come up here. I really thank you for giving us a little piece of your heart tonight.
Also, we'd like to thank our coaches, Antigone Barton, Catherine Coco, Andrew Davis, and these three and myself, we spend a few, hours of our schedule helping to craft these stories for you tonight. And we thank all of you guys for the wonderful work you did in that field. Also, I wanted to mention on the back of your program, you might have seen some future dates for this. Unfortunately, we're kind of going on hiatus with this for a little while. But would you like us to do more of these? Yeah? All right. We'll definitely be thinking about it. We'll definitely be thinking about it.
Have you guys gotten your brownies yet? No? Okay, well, I guess now I'm going to tell you that you'll get your brownies. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming out tonight. We've really enjoyed being able to hear you guys' perspectives. And as a newsroom, it's such a blessing and a great opportunity to be able to get closer to our community and to really get in touch with the people who are reading our paper. So thank you so much.
Thank you and good night.